Good evening and welcome to Story Hour. I'm tonight's host, Laura Blackwell. My co-host, whose wrestling name is the marvelous Daniel Marcus. Not really, but I like to say that. Started Story Hour almost 5 years ago to just help people stay connected. And this whole time since, we found that we still like that, maybe even need that, to connect to other people through stories. And so we've been coming back pretty much every Wednesday. Works for us. And it's nice to see all of you here too. We always have two awesome writers, and tonight is no exception. Tonight, our awesome writers are returning favorite Douglas Gwilym and your next favorite, Shelley Lavigne. Not meaning next favorite as in one below favorite, as in upcoming favorite. Sorry, bad writing. If you're here on Zoom, feel free to chime in on the text chat. Sometimes it gets a little lively there. If you're here on Facebook, feel free to chime in on the text chat. Probably nobody's going to talk to you there, but that's not because nobody loves you. It's just because we're not, monitoring that as closely. So just behave and wait. We'll catch up. Promise. So let's just get to some stories, shall we? Our first reader tonight is Shelley Lavigne. Shelley Lavigne is a purveyor of moist literature. Oh, let's say that again. Moist literature. Usually queer oddities. Their novella, The Flesh of the Sea, with Lord Xstacy, has landed on shores and in bookshops. They live in Ontario, Canada, where they roam their neighborhood in search of haunted houses and cool bugs. I like bugs too. My husband collects them. You can also find them online at ShelleyLavigne.com. Shelley, welcome to Story Hour.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We're excited too. So you brought something to read for us. What is it tonight?
Yeah, I brought actually an oldie but a goodie. It's a story called The Skin We're In, and it's about trans shapeshifters, and it's about government, authoritarian governments, and it's about sort of
What a horrible idea. Authoritarian governments?
who'd have
Awful.
thought? And it's actually an older story too, which there's some parallels in there that as I was reading it back over to prepare, I was a little chilled, to be frank.
Yeah, well, yeah, humans human in some really bad ways sometimes. In cycle. Well, so do we have any content warnings though?
Yeah, we do. I'm going to be discussing a story that does have some gore, some body horror, as well as incarceration.
Okay, the first two usually. Well, okay, yeah, that's good. Thank you. Please, the stage is yours.
Here I go. My body is a palimpsest, erased and written over. I update my mutable self, always hunting for new traits that better suit me. The gap-toothed smile taken from the French dairymaid, the beautiful nose worn by the Egyptian bureaucrat, the dimpled ass of the Grecian olive oil maker. I always thanked the wearers for carrying the traits to maturity before taking what had always been meant for me. But even with my thanks and care, my mutability branded me a monster in the eyes of officials and lawmakers. I was hunted through years and continents. Their systems were built on rigidly defined categories with an almost impossible to cross boundaries, but through which I slipped. Is it about beauty? A witch hunter once asked as his life drained from the careful cuts I made to extract his belly button. No, it's about creating my true form, I told him. It's true. I am not vain. My home is not made for mirrors so I could admire my beauty, but to admire the body I have built. I am a sculptor. I am a surgeon. I am a sorcerer. It's a matter of perspective. You appear in my house of mirrors, having somehow fooled my security system. I've never met you before, but I recognize the folded way you hold your body. You tuck in, you bind, attempting to reconfigure your form, or failing that, make it invisible. I remember the small measure of relief that posture once gave me. It's a parlor trick compared to what I can do now. You seem like the other supplicants and acolytes who have come looking for me in the past hundreds of years. Many spurned me when I pulled out the tools, fainted when I cut and stitched and seamed and disposed of the carriers, but not you. These days, doctors do the cutting, and the hands of the squeamish stay clean. Fewer people seek me out now. Stories of me have faded into myth, magic an unlikely explanation for the uncanny during this modern scientific age. Few people believe I could be real, and even less seek me out. It suits me. I've grown tired of seeing myself turn from hero to villain in the eyes of supplicants, seeing their unease at my own fragmented, uncharacterizable body. For the few who still look, I have learned to use new tools to protect myself. I have alerts, I track online searches, and I can receive enough warning to lay low for a couple of years, or for the truly determined, lay enough breadcrumbs to lead them to their demise, or to a house filled with mutilated corpses with the police en route. There had been no surprise visitors in a decade, until you. I see your hunger, your love of refinement. You strike me as someone who understands that to facet a gem, to make something more beautiful, a part of a precious stone must be destroyed. Teach me, is the first thing you say as I turn on my kitchen light and see you standing there amongst the stainless steel and polished marble. Behind you, a shivering man cowers. He is small, perhaps malnourished, terrified. You want to do the whole thing? I ask. Or do you have a specific part in mind? You point to the man's nose. It's delicate, upturned. And my payment? I ask. You're free to take whatever of his you'd like. You deliver the line with confidence, so sure that it will be payment enough. I laugh at your naivety. I like the way my vocal cords laugh. It's what drew me to them. I hardly think your leftovers are a fitting payment for my tutelage, I say. I walk over and take your chin in my hand, examining what your face has to offer. You try to hide your fear, but your striking green eyes, which at first refuse to meet mine, and then hold my gaze too long, make it obvious. I like your eyes, I suggest. Two-handed, you push me away. No! They flash in anger, and I like them even more. I want them. I could pluck them right out of your head. In fact, I should. They're mine. You're just another carrier. I feel a hunger rise in me, and it's hard not to kill you on the spot. It's been a while since someone delivered something to me that I wanted as badly. But I'm also intrigued. I may be growing a little tired of solitude. Your company is almost as valuable as your eyes. Something else. Pick another thing, you say. There is one thing. Not something I've often asked for. A favor, I say, knowing it makes me sound like a parody of a mythological monster, the kind that live in moss-covered cottages in dark forests, overcharging the desperate for small magics. But this house is no shack. You are not desperate. And what I'm about to teach you is no trifle. Final offer. One favor to be claimed at an unspecified future date. If you fail to comply, every semen you will come loose on the next full moon. You gnaw at your lips. They're not your best feature, and I'm shocked you aren't replacing them first. But maybe you haven't found the right set yet. As you contemplate, I look over at the man's nose. I have to commend you. It is rather nice. Not one that suits me, but it is attractive. Fine, you say, sticking out a hand. Verbal confirmation is enough to seal the deal, but you seem to think a handshake is needed. So I acquiesce. I feel your power when our skin touches. You would have figured out my tricks on your own eventually, but this will speed up the process. I understand your need to slough off the ill-fitting skin you were born in. I pull you in closer. I want to be near the heat of your magic and potential. You don't resist me, and our knees knock together. You better not be squeamish, I say with a smile. You nod grimly and turn to pull out a scalpel from a small carrying case. You're prepared. I like that. We spend decades together as I help you build your body. It's a slow and difficult process. Not the transplantation, the grafting. You pick up the trick of that quickly. It's your judgment that needs work. Just because you like the trait on another does not mean it suits you. Just like with a perfume, your own essence needs to be factored in. But you're so desperate to transform that you don't wait to find the right parts. So what you stitch onto your body rots and festers, rejected. Shamefully, you try to hide a bad ear from me for a couple days, but I can smell it, the sweet stench of rotten flesh. I rip it off of you in the night, unable to sleep because of the stink. It feels slimy in my hands, the tissue sloughing off the cartilage. You're ruining my pillowcases, I say as you cradle the hole in your face. You're still bitter at breakfast the next day, wrapping your head in with gauze like a mummy. Your silent treatment lasts months. I'm hundreds of years old, so I'm patient. But your pride is still a newborn thing, every hurt fresh. I'm the one who caves, unable to bear your silence. So I ask questions to get you talking. How did you find me? I try one evening, and it works. I was an art historian, you say. I traced you through art. It wasn't easy. Most days, I felt more like a paleontologist trying to reconstruct a lineage from slight changes in the extant images of your body. And I'm still missing some steps, but I got enough to piece it together. You hold up a finger and go rifle through your things, which you carried into my apartment in suitcases years ago and only ever half unpacked, as if unwilling to commit or always ready to flee. I never asked. You come back and place a binder on the countertop. In it are art prints of varying quality, my face circled in each, sometimes with notes like different eyes, or perhaps shorter, or male, female. I recognize some paintings as the ones I sat for, but some are new to me, likely made without my knowledge. In some ways, I'm not surprised to see so many representations of me. I have always liked to have my body immortalized in art. But I have been quite scrupulous about destroying evidence of my previous forms when I find a better feature, unwilling to see the incorrect body I once occupied. Seeing so many pictures makes me feel sick, like my skin is wrong, like I felt before I found this power. Even my lungs feel wrong, unable to feel with air. What? You ask when you see me struggling to breathe. Burn this, I roar. It's not right. Those aren't right. They aren't me. I don't want to see those faces in my house or anywhere. You pull the binder out of my reach. No, I spent years on this thesis. I ruined relationships. I spent every cent I had searching for the smallest hints of you. I'm not just going to throw away my life's work because you don't think it's a flattering representation of you. How can I make you see it's not vanity, that those images are wrong, false, repulsive? I thought if anyone would understand, it would be you, but you see it as a personal attack. You think I don't value you or your intelligence and hard work? A part of me wants to explain, but as I watch, the book vanishes in your hands. I wonder if you've had any other uncanny teachers. Have you given your decades of your life to others? Have you left them breathless or begging for more? The jealousy and rage lock away my ability to form coherent sentences, so I use my lungs and my vocal cords to scream. We fight for the first time, bitter, biting. I tear at your skin and you tear at mine. It's me or the book, I offer as I grip a section of your scalp. You hold some of my fingers in one hand and a bloody knife in the other. I know your answer before you turn to the bedroom and pack. You leave without saying goodbye. You aren't sentimental, and you've learned what you needed to. The years roll on, full of forest fires, floods, and technological progress. I patch my wounds after you go, but I'm loath to change the body that knew you. When I realize this, I hack at myself with a vengeance, trying to erase every trace of the skin you once held and let go of. I move frequently, desperate to find new material. The world is a blur of dust and LED lights in the bodies of carriers. Decades pass. Sometimes I see faces in a crowd that remind me of features you had talked of wanting for yourself. I approach them, curious if they are you, but I don't feel your energy, your electric buzz. I think briefly of kidnapping them, finding you, presenting them like an offering or an apology. I've grown sentimental in my old age. Surgery gets almost as good as me. To think the powders and pads and fake noses were once high technology and now you can get your fingers lengthened and your irises modified. I occasionally wonder if I would have needed this power if I had been born now, capable of changing myself without resorting to such bloody measures. I dismiss the idea. I prefer shaping my own destiny. My fate feels much better in my own hands, away from the prying eyes of authority. I watch governments and empires rise and fall, the ceaseless swing of the pendulum. In this age, changing appearances is just as often about anonymity as it is about beauty. Cameras dot the streets, found in everything from cleaner bots to vending machines. These robots see us to better serve us, assess our emotions, remember our preferences. Privacy is the price you pay for endless convenience. Yet another deal where the price is greater than the reward. Regulators say crime is down, but it's just that incarceration is up. It's harder to run in a panopticon. Those who want to hide can change their nose shape, and they can pay extra to do it in an unlicensed chop shop that does not report their new face to the information ministry. And that will help for a bit, but no doctor can change the skin you shed on every surface, because it's not just cameras suspects need to evade, but sensors too. Because DNA fuels the surveillance state. Those outside the law can wear gloves, but who wants to in this inescapable heat? And they can scrub every surface they touch, but something will eventually be missed. One hair will be caught by a breeze or slip under a chair. Some bot will brush by them and collect a sample. So those wanting to hide, come to me, because they know I can do what those doctors cannot. Petitioners find me through others. The stories of me spread once again, but not all are willing to pay my price. It takes a certain desperation, a certain ferocity and will to live, to find me, to drag behind yourself the body you are willing to take, and to acquire the money I will demand in exchange. And those bodies don't last very long. You reject what is not yours, so they must keep coming. I live quite comfortably in my new house of mirrors. I am aware I have not changed my appearance in long. This is a risk, but I'm too busy and too confident. One day, I see you across a train platform. 2 train lines and hundreds of people separating us and surrounding us. At first, I'm not sure how I know it's you. Your current body is so different from the one I knew so intimately. You stand tall now. You favor full lips as I do, although there's a delicacy to the rest of your body and features I never found appealing. I like edges, sharpness. You kept your eyes. This strikes me as sentimental, but I'm glad I might get another shot at those green shimmering orbs. I want to approach you, to touch you. My mouth and eyes water. It's been hundreds of years. I've lost count. 567 years, 180 days, 7 hours, 15 minutes. I should stop. I want to ask you why you've resurfaced now. You must have been avoiding me. It's a small planet. I should know. You make eye contact. It feels electric. And that's when a shock bullet pierces me. Help, I say to you, calling in my favor. I fall into a sea of panicked bystanders, and then darkness. I wake up in a cell for the second time in my life. I spend the day screaming until my vocal cords show signs of rejection. Then, I stay quiet as I recall that first cell. I have been born many times, but I only died once, over 1,000 years ago. I had been a strange child, then a strange adult, unliked by most. In those days, my options had been the nunnery or the wedding bed. I asked my parents for a monastic life, envisioning life as a nun as one of freedom and learning, one where my body was a thing between me and my maker. But instead, I was to be an anchoress, a steady, fixed point of faith, a chain to link the mundane to the supernatural, to God. Kept outside society to gain a greater perspective. It's an honor, my parents told me before handing me over to the church. They found it easier to grieve me than to love me. I screamed myself raw that first night, those first weeks. I dragged my hands along the walls, trying to pry the stones loose or widen my 3 windows, one for food, one for waste, and one to provide guidance. I succeeded only in painting my walls with my bloody fingertips. The priest refused to acknowledge me, even as I wailed through Mass. I was, according to the records, dead, and in my death, my purpose was to provide heavenly advice, not mortal complaints. The bishop came and told me to stop, but I spat on him through my window. I was declared unredeemable, to be discarded and replaced. They sealed my cell, closed up my 3 windows. I sat in what my body created, this body I had never felt comfortable in, unable to escape. I was going to die. I had already died. I would die again. But I refused to lie down in my ready-made coffin. I would not let others decide my fate. I was reborn from my own dirt, a creature full of rage and determination, stubbornly immortal. I kicked off the boards covering the chamber pothole and dug in the dirt until I could squeeze through, the skin on my shoulders, ribs and hips pulling, tearing, sloughing off as I pushed myself through. I walked in the dark of night to my family's farm. I had always admired my brother's arms, so I took those. I liked my sister's hips, so those became mine as well. My mother created fine needlework with her hands, which I gleefully attached to myself as she watched. Her muscle memory would serve me well for years to come. From my father, I took eyes much like my own. I remade myself in my own image, and thus I escaped my first cell. I escaped my first life. But this new cell has no holes that could grant me passage. Waste and food are pumped through pipes I will never fit through. A hand-sized flap at the bottom of the door allows passage only to the cleaner bot that comes daily. Light beams down at all hours from much further up than I can reach. I never leave. I'm interrogated via a screen. The electrified floor keeps me honest. The woman who interrogates me has ears that remind me of your failed attempt. She has the same attached earlobes and pronounced tragus. I focus on those. I think of you and what you owe me. You don't have much time left to rescue me, although I will admit I have not been tracking the moon cycle. The passing of the time in this place has been fuzzy. If you die, I'm not sure how I will get out of here. How did you acquire the right thumb of Reginald Williams, born 2338, died 2565? I do not answer. The days pass. How did you implant the teeth of Minji Kim, born 2601, died 2613? I do not answer. I wonder if I choose to die, will my body obey me? I think about how there are things much worse than death, especially in a place like this. Death might be preferable to this parody of a life. The names and dates keep coming. There are people of science who believe there must be a logical explanation to me, so they are loath to call me a sorcerer. They finally take me out of my cell to try a new tactic. Like a kid trying to figure out how a toy works, they disassemble me. They think that by pulling off an arm, they can figure out how I attached it. They draw blood to determine what cocktail of chemicals keeps my body from rejecting what they deem to be foreign tissue. But these parts have always been mine, and my body knows it. It is the only way this has ever worked. But the dismemberment has another purpose. If I'm in pieces, in jars, I cannot teach others. And then, behind a mask, I see your eyes. You waste no time. You slice into the doctor next to you with your scalpel. My mouth fills with blood that is not my own. Doctors and security try to stop you, but you've had centuries of experience dicing and cutting and slicing. I watch you with one eye and smile, but I'm not sure you can see my joy on what's left of my face. You're so elegant now, so confident and comfortable in the skin you've made. You free me, cradling a body that is not much more than a torso. I sleep like a babe against your chest. The next morning, I awake in a body that isn't quite right, but will tide me over for a little while. As I stumble to the mirror to see what you have done, I see one of your eyes looking back at me from inside my skull. Movement behind me catches my attention and I tense, afraid of floors, afraid of capture, afraid of an unending brightness and scrutiny. But it's just you, rising from the chair in which you had been resting. You look tired. I must have taken hours to repair. But good. It won't last long. I did the best I could with little notice, you say. Your voice is raspier than before. And your eyes are mismatched now. The skin around your new one is inflamed, and the eye is protruding a bit, as if under pressure. You're already rejecting it. But I know I won't reject the one you've given me. It feels right. I wonder how long you have before I decide I want the complete set. That's it.
Dang.
Damn.
Wow. I really like that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was amazing, Shelley.
It was amazing.
Usually when I have the links, I just paste in the links and I'm like, oh, follow along, la la la. But
Yeah.
I was a little distracted and I couldn't look away. So
Yeah.
everybody just bookmark it so you can give it an eyeball read later.
Mhm.
But wow.
I love the way you read it too. It was really a fantastic reading.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really, really, really was. Thank you.
Yeah.
You should do a whole lot more of this.
Yeah. Hey, I'm around. I have
All
other
right.
stories.
Good to know. Well, it is our way at Story Hour to just take a moment after the first reader to integrate the story into our bodies. And yes, make sure there's no rejection of that craft. And yes, once the story is where it needs to be, take a deep breath to ready ourselves for another. Everyone, that was Shelley Lavigne, and our next reader tonight is Douglas Gwilym. Douglas Gwilym is a Bram Stoker Award-nominated author and editor who has also been known to compose a weird fiction rock opera or two. His story, Poppy's Poppy, was a finalist for a Stoker in 2023, and Year 6 made Ellen Datlow's recommended reading list for Best Horror 14. He co-edits The Midnight Zone, first edition Novus Monstrum, a collection of never-before-seen monsters featuring greats and new talent in strange dark fiction. Gemma Files read her story from this on Story Hour once, and it was incredible. Loved that one.
That's a wild ride.
Oh, it was. It was through this strange Norse mythology that, oh my gosh.
Who else could give us a story written at the cusp of that culture giving way to Christianity?
Yeah, and
It's brilliant and strange.
It was so immediate and credible.
Mhm.
And her reading of it was so fluid. I was just like, do you just say all these words, these Norse words just all the time?
I think she does.
Maybe she does. Maybe she does. Some of her readings are almost like channeling, it feels like sometimes.
Gemma's wonderful to work
Yeah.
with.
She is.
She wrote that piece for our anthology, as did another 8 really amazing, well-known folks. And it's split between those and new voices, which we like to stress.
Yes.
Get
Yes,
them
but
an
it's good to
audience.
have both.
Mhm.
Sort of like we did at Story Hour tonight. 2 excellent voices, one you've heard here quite a bit before and one that is new to us. But more about this Douglas Gwilym. He reads classics of the proto-weird on YouTube and taught at Alpha Young Writers Workshop. Put his stories in your brain at Lamplight, Shoreline of Infinity, Dark Horses, the magazine of weird fiction, Tales from the Moonlit Path, and Penumbric. Or listen at Creepy Podcast and Tales to Terrify. Douglas, welcome back.
Thank you.
So I understand you have a few stories for us tonight.
I do. My upcoming collection, they they take our best and other weird tales. I've got two more stories from that collection, and it's one of those odd things. I thought, well, this would fit, and this would fit, and it was only when I read through them that I realized they're intertwined in odd ways, and they have related themes. And it also is not miles from Shelley's stories. So we have some stuff going on tonight.
And did you collude on that?
We absolutely did. Yeah, right, Shelley? No.
Yeah. See, that's the funny thing is that almost always there's a theme to the show, but it emerges as it goes.
Yeah.
It's not apparent at the beginning. It's
So-
like mushrooms, you know, they're right there under your lawn, but it takes a while for them to poke up and for you to see. rest of
Right.
Yeah, that's us, mushrooms. So these stories, do we need any content warnings?
Really light language in the second one, which is a bit of a dystopian future fic. And the first one's a little weird tale.
Okay,
Little urban modern weird tale.
please proceed.
Just because I'm feeling inclined tonight, here's the, if we can do this, will this work? You can just make out the illustration.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
This is Teapot. He was sure they wouldn't notice him. It was far more common to miss him than to see. Probability was on his side, but there was always that one. When she looked up and blinked and turned her head to the side before looking again, there was no longer any question. And it hurt him, made his heart a little sick, made it do a little jig as if in anticipation of more terrible human music. Sometimes you didn't want to do what you always had to do. You didn't get to choose your appetites. You could choose what to do with them, of course. Be a beggar, be a thief, be a martyr, but be a monster. All in service of getting what you want, getting what your body wants. The mind, well, the mind was another matter, another creature entirely. Once he'd felt he'd known what to give his mind to make it happy, but after 81 years of trying, his mind had begun to seem as gray, as wicked, as impossible to please as his body. She got up and walked out, and for a moment he thought that would be all right. Thought he could twist himself into a tight enough knot to keep all of the reflexes from going off, to keep things from going pop all down his spine and then wang doodle down her spine and into the orifici, the sweet dark places, pouring himself into her like tea into the loveliest of teapots, like a tea that takes the pot and makes it its own, makes it itself. He would be her, wear her body and face for a time, and then he would awake in a deli or laundromat, emptied out and alone, and as gray as ever. He was already on the street, his bum leg battling him, making him feel conspicuous, and a tentacle of cold sweat maneuvering down the inside of his leg beneath a carefully pleated pant leg. The drip persisted as he walked, traveling all the way down past his knee and into a cool puddle at the top of a short sock. By the time he reached the corner, she'd disappeared around. She made a pleasant swish, bobbing into sight again. She was like an urn of precious incense, like 1,000 others, but with a pitch and a rhythm all her own. He licked his lips compulsively, reassured himself that no one was watching. She got onto a bus. He almost didn't make it. The bus driver was pulling away with the cavalier and age-old attitude of bus drivers everywhere, but then seemed to think better of it. Paused. He pulled himself up against the side of the doorframe and in, wondering if the driver's expression was one of pity. Tight curls and raised eyebrows, also a woman. He registered. He then moved backward, obeying the signs, obeying the law of the land, hoping he wasn't overshooting, hoping she'd be waiting there at the end of the long bus, the extra long bus, with the caterpillar pivot in the middle. And she was. He could taste her now. He could hear every peculiar beat of her body, not just the heartbeats, though he could make those out as easily as a fisherman attuned to the tattoo sound of his depth finder. Could she hear her own body's rhythm and flow? The motion of fluids and colloids through sacs and corridors, through all of the internal places that were precious without her ever thinking of them, that were ripe with secrets. He knew that the word organ applied, but that word meant another thing as well, the instrument, and that instrument had its own secrets. He remembered a boy, hair combed in perfect rows with something stiff to keep him real and immutable. The voice of a preacher, rising and falling mindlessly, did not reach him, the boy, but the towering thing did. All gleaming pipe, like the teeth of a giant, breathing low whispers, secrets that cut him to the quick, poured into him like it wanted to make for the orifici, for the sweet dark places to wang-doodle down his spine and pour tea into his teapot. It made him nauseous and cold, and made his feet tingle, and he'd fled, barely controlling his bowels. Those voices were not ancient, but they could speak to the ancient voices somehow, to the keening, terrible sound people thought of as music that was so much less true than the musics they carried in their bodies, in their bladders and rattles and keys. Those sounds, the sounds that fought against the rhythms within, were the sounds of monkeys, apes raging, mad, enraptured agents of ancient religions moving fingers over the teeth of a beast, a creature whose noise rose up and felt like it would tear his flesh from its bones, return him to the primal essence he'd worked so long to build away from. He was awash with sweat, elbow to elbow with her, moving with the rumble of the bus and looking out over an evening fog churning up from the river. Both looked, neither turning. Companions. He could smell her particular patchwork of shampoo and foundation and salad dressing and body. He could feel the pop in his mind, poised to spark the pop up his spine. And then she turned and looked at him, gave him a half smile. With a swift motion, she slipped an arc of plastic and foam over his head, taking care to cover his ears. He couldn't resist. She pressed a button on a device in her palm. It filled him up and made him itself. The bus driver woke him on the empty bus at the end of the line. That's Teapot. So the next I have for you is a bit of science fiction, I guess, or dystopianism.
Genre, gender, it's all silly and
Yeah.
divisive. We don't need those.
I'm not very good at it, and I'm all right with that. So this is Glory and the Xstacy 3000 Luxury. And I'll give you the illustration since I gave you the other one. See if we can do this. Come on, lock in. There you go. Glory and the Xstacy 3000 Luxury. Pansy was alone in the bunks. She could swear she felt it in her gut that the management was on to them, that they'd begun staggering their work schedules to give her and her bunkmates less time in the room together to plot. Nobody on the line, management or no, would ever admit to anything of the kind, of course. The tyranny they practiced was the kindest, gentlest sort. All get along, keep the line moving, the voices intoned. The line is zen, the line is now. If you never dreamed of anything else, Pansy supposed you could get by. But that's not what the historian said. The historian said that kind of getting by was a way to die, a way to pull your own soul out onto the floor and kill it good. But the historian also said the whites were real. So you could think about what she said, but maybe not bank on it. Pansy pulled herself up from her own 4x7 space to the next bunk. It was Glory's, books piled in the center. Contraband, probably, all examples of a thing she called thrillers, with half-naked women visible in the dim light on a lot of the covers. But the management didn't dig this deep. There were just too many damned grays like them for that. It was the halls that were lined with cameras. If you didn't take your secrets out there, you had a chance at being okay. She was about to move on and up to the next bunk when she sidled into something that clanked, a familiar sound, but not one you heard in here. She pulled back the standard issue bedspread and gasped. It was pretty clear that what she was looking at, parts of an Xstacy 3000 luxury teapot, reconfigured, custom soldered, repurposed. Pansy's memories flashed across the odd stray words she'd heard Glory say to the historian, the time Glory'd spent off the radar, the way she'd gone guilty and silent at her once too often. The fucking thing, that fucking moron, was a gun. Glory had made a teapot into a gun, like she thought the whites, the resistance, was here and would need her help. Pipe dreams in a place that at least had plenty of pipe. Pansy didn't know what to be. Angry? Yes. Hopeful? She would bury the thing in the far corner of the bunk. It felt really wrong to even come into contact with it. She could hardly look at the thing because it made her blood want to boil. She rolled off the bunk hard, dropped herself down from their perch, lifetime of practice, and landed in the only other room they had, waste disposal. It was theirs, but it was not a place to linger. She checked her uniform in the polished steel to be sure she was regulation, half-slammed the door on her way out, and fully stomped down the first stretch of corridor to the mover. She gripped the railing and let the high-speed floor fling her back toward MF6 F9, back toward their sector of the great factory, where they lived, of the line. She took a deep breath, centered herself in the moment. Damn it, if that didn't sometimes help. The thought that came to her was an old one. What was it like to not be her? To be someone else? And always assuming there still was such a place, what was it like outside? Pansy and the repeaters, she muttered. It was what she had. It was the secret name for them, the secret identity of the mild-mannered, sanctioned and declawed bit of entertainment they were. It was how they got to be them, in a shared space, a set. Management would never let them be what they were if there had really been a moment's suspicion. She peered through the rosy glass at the line, cupped her hands around her eyes, both to see better and to make her identity less perfectly obvious to anyone who happened to be looking up from the line. But there was no point. Not even the oldies looked up from the line much. It didn't pay. She had the thought, and a meltdown lit up over in F10, a pileup. She cursed herself for not knocking on wood. Might be a friend over there suffering. Might even be Emmy. She let her breathing cycle. It wasn't, and the historian said it was stupid to be superstitious in a world made of metal, in a world where we served the rhythms, served the machines. She scanned the room through the glass. Where was Glory? Ah, there, right in the window where she was supposed to be. But no, wait, that wasn't her. Pansy's gut rumbled. She should have been there. It didn't pay to linger, so she darted back to the mover. Half ran on the worthless, familiar thing, though that didn't really get you anywhere special, and pulled open the hatch to the bunks. Glory was there. In the shower-shitter combo, still half-clothed, grinning at her like an idiot. Pansy hastily pulled the hatch shut behind her, though there was nobody immediately in evidence to see. Glory dropped her smile. She knew, and Pansy knew, it was the fake-ass smile anyway, the one she used when she was hoping to throw a sucker punch that would land with zero suspicion. On impulse and adrenaline, Pansy half-ducked. Nah, stupid, I ain't gonna hit ya. No, Pansy sneered back. No, but I know you know, and we're late. I know what? We're supposed to be rocking the mic. We're on American Bandstand. Shit. Pansy catapulted herself past her friend who was the drummer for Pansy and the Repeaters, and catapulted herself into her bunk. Did the routine at double speed. War paint? Check. Extra strings? Check. Where the hell are Emmy and the historian? She asked. Already there, waiting. Let's go then. They sidestepped the movers, went straight for the uppers. They were called the downers from above, and on out of MF6 entirely, up into another place almost exactly like theirs. There, they would see more grays, just like them, an endless supply, and play their hearts out into a thing that wasn't theirs, a thing that wasn't really the thing. When they arrived, Emmy had nearly everything set up. The historian was tuning the god-awful ridiculous pipes, trying to put some moxie into their terrified bleating, trying to give them spine. Glory jumped behind the drums. They weren't hers. They weren't even made to order, but were a fixture in this room, put there long before anyone living was born. For whoever could play the songs. For anyone who was able. Glory moved sticks through the air like magic wands and made contact, hit, hit, ba-dump, tentative, then fizz, fizz, razzle, slap, thump. The kit looked weird, but you could beat on it with sticks, and it would say some of the right things for sure. Pansy strapped on her bass guitar, one thing they had that was right, that was rock and roll. She adjusted the strap, made it long enough, short enough, and then just right. Tapped the mic. Silenced the squeal with a palm. She popped the cable into the amp already live, and the wet snap reverberated through the towering spiraled hall. Emmy hit a tentative chord on the guitar, an artifact that looked like it was handmade. The setlist was at her feet, stapled there by some unseen underling or overling, but she knew the setlist by heart. Not even the order ever changed. She looked out at the seats, grays, row upon row of grays, hundreds, thousands. When had she ever seen anything but these people who looked like her? Why did she bother to look? She glanced at Glory. Her uniform was half unbuttoned, and she looked crazed, like she wasn't sure how to do it again. But she was nodding. They were a go. 1, 2, 3, 4. They made music, and the sound built, thrumming against the plastic walls of the great institution. They were there because they were made to be there. They would play, perform songs written by some manager who, if there was any mercy, was long dead. But nothing in the rulebook said they couldn't play the music the way they wanted to give it some of themselves. The intro built like a barrel of mixer parts falling down the staircase. But then it locked in and they began to feel it. A hymn from the hymnal of the line. Be more than a cog in the machine, be a joyful cog. It was written down tempo, written for something called an organ, meant to be a big thrumming ballad, a rousing anthem. Emmy ascended in a tornado of monstrous guitar notes, melodic but hard and dauntless as the line itself. Pansy's bass descended in counterpoint and then landed on a tough run of repetitive notes. She dug in, settled into a groove like blood, like muscles tensing and flexing, like everything. And then she began to howl the words like she was drilling them out of her skull and tearing them into the world with forceps. This was it. This was what they'd planned. The Greys were confused. Pansy and the Repeaters, they could not call themselves that, never seemed to play the same mess hall twice. The factory was so large. When they were on, and the deep paperwork was clear. As long as you played the chords, sang the songs, you were kosher, you were beyond reproach. But every time they did it, they felt something crack a little more out there, felt something loosen just a little bit. Better yet, they had started to feel it in themselves. Now, in the music, they came together in a way they couldn't on the line. Swelled, became one. Glory was the bones, was what they built it all on. She was a crazy bitch, maybe, but you had to love her. Pansy dropped her voice an octave for the second verse of I will always uphold the quality standards of my sector with pride, and began to twitch and thrash. The sound rose up around her, blinded her, made her, no, not forget, but remember every other moment like this one. Every moment of life, real life. Only when she was here in it could she fully feel it. It was like being in a dream and remembering every other dream you've had as if it was one continuous lifetime you could only access from within. But her mind came to rest on the gun. The damn Teapot gun. If it was a way out, it was probably worth hoping for, but she realized they'd need more. They'd need an arsenal. She took a breath, so deep it was painful, and cranked into the next song. The crowd had taken on a weird sway, daring no more. She worked at her instrument like she did at the hydraulics when she was on Beeline, both hands in earnest, like a landslide. The crowd was gray, and then white. A flash, nano-glimpsed, but it was there. It had been there, was weaving in and out of sight in the folds. It felt like an answer to something like a prayer. If the whites were really out there, if the whites were here, all the more reason to turn stolen teapot parts into weapons. For Glory, for Pansy and her friends, it was all the more reason to hope. That is Glory and the Xstacy 3000 Ultra. Thank you for
I have a
listening.
little teapot, short and stout.
I'm doing teapots tonight. It's teapots and tunes all the way down.
I like it.
And I never really thought about that.
I guess teapots are just a major theme in your life.
I guess if there's a third teapot story, I don't know what it is.
How many teapots do you own, Douglas?
I have a teapot. I have no secret reservoir of teapots. I've never tried to turn a teapot into a gun. Many, many things I'm admitting here tonight.
Although if you had another teapot, perhaps you would consider sacrificing one for the purpose of becoming an armament or an
Worth
arm.
a shot. I mean, obviously, this is a piece like deeply inspired by me being in my 20s and loving Tank Girl. You know, it's very, you know, post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, who doesn't love Tank Girl, really?
I will. So here we are. It's
Yeah,
almost
here we
11.
It is for you.
Yeah, me too.
It's great.
Right.
Daniel and me, we're just on the other coast. This is perfect for us.
Mhm.
Well, gosh, I mean, Daniel,
Seriously.
what a night. I'm kind of reeling, but I also felt a through line.
Mhm.
Definitely
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
And oh,
Lovely work. Thank you
stories.
so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
Yeah, thanks.
I love the resistance, sort of the resistance in in the stories. I was like, this is cool. I like this. Gives me energy, fuel.
It was fun to,
Real neat.
be doing a post-apocalypse and then go in for all the rock and roll stereotypes of like being in a band. And all the things I've lived through because I've been in many bands. But it's,
Yeah. And, you know, there is resistance and there's also persistence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Story Hour persists. Daniel and
Indeed.
I will be back next week
Indeed.
with another two readers. We'll have Daria Lavelle and Toby Ogundiran.
All right.
But, you know, it is always a good idea to check storyhour2020.com the day of just to see if there are any changes. And actually, it's a good place to go anytime you're working on your schedule because you can look at the calendar and the upcoming Wednesdays and see which ones you really just don't dare miss, the ones you just won't forgive yourself for missing. But that said, if you have missed something or you just really, really want to have those stories in your brain again, we also have the recordings.
Mhm.
So you can go back and look at 5 years worth of recordings.
That backlog is wonderful. I've had so many good friends read for you guys, and there's so many talented authors out there, and you have quite a showcase here. It's
We
been
do.
it's a lot of fun to just randomly go at it too.
Yes,
Never know what you're gonna get.
we
It's
have
a
been
show of
very fortunate.
surprises.
We have been very fortunate with the talent that has come to read their
Oh,
stories.
yeah.
So, Douglas Gwilym, Shelley Lavigne, thank you very much for an evening of wonderful stories.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you,
having
Laura.
us.
Thank you, Daniel. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We hope to have you both again.
Yeah.
And thank you to my co-host, the marvelous Daniel Marcus, whether he's wrestling or not, always marvelous. Because without Daniel, none of us would be here. Definitely a thank you is in order. And thank you to all of you who are here in the Zoom, all of you who are watching on Facebook, all of you who watch at some point in the future. Because, you know, as long as we all enjoy these stories, we really are all together in this same hour, this same story. Good night.